The Sun, Lord of Mysteries Chapter 111 to 120. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. Chapter 111, Love and Family. Backland. A gentle breeze blew through the deserted entrance to a golden cathedral. It had a striking steeple and an engraved sacred life emblem on the outer wall. The emblem featured a baby surrounded by wheat, flowers, and spring water. The cathedral stood out from the surrounding structures, exuding a sacred aura of life. The interior of the cathedral was made up of halls with strained windows. In the hall, there was a neatly arranged room of cues. There was a statue of a plump and beautiful lady at the top, right in front, with ears of wheat growing from her feet and surrounded by spring water. Her dress appears to flutter, and embedded in it are various herbs and flowers, as well as depictions of various animals. She appears to be tall and holy. In her arms is an adorable infant in swaddling clothes. The statue depicted Earth Mother, the goddess of life and harvest. A woman dressed in crimson knelt in front of the god's statue. Her hair was long and curly, and her eyes were crimson. Aurnia, the queen of Blood Moon, was the woman in question. Aurnia clasped her hands together and leaned down towards them. "I repent," she muttered. Her voice was filled with agony and pain. There was no candle in the cathedral, allowing the crimson moonlight to filter through the windows and illuminate the statue of Earth Mother. Earth Mother has always been a mysterious god. Her origins were hazy and strange. It sparked numerous debates about the true identity of the Earth Mother among the circles of high-sequence beyonders. The knowledge of gods is widespread in this era. Except for the Earth Mother, most angels knew the origins of gods. And, despite the fact that the majority of the clues pointed to her identity, Umbella, Giant Queen. But still, many people were skeptical. Aurnia knew the truth. She knew who the Earth Mother really was, Lilith, the sanguine ancestor. She had always known. Despite the passing of time, Aurnia never lost faith in her ancestor. Regardless of the difficulties and disasters on her perilous path, her devotion remained unwavering. The times had changed. The mystical races were wiped out by the tides of time. Yet, their blood race survives and thrives. It was all due to her ancestors' blessing. It wasn't she who led the race and shielded it from humanity's hatred. Ads by PubFuture. Without her ancestor, the blood race would have perished along with the mythical races. Her ancestor had always been there for her and protected her through everything. She owes it all. Yet I repent, she muttered, her eyes closed and her voice trembling. Her head was bowed, not daring to look at the statue. N-O-V-E in .c Om. The Return of the Black Emperor. Alitsa Tudor's Betrayal of the Seven Gods. The Future Ascension of Hermit. The Awakening of Death. The Restless Abyss at the Edge of the World. The coming era will be one of unprecedented chaos and war. Even gods may perish in the coming perilous times, not to mention the fate of those below. The blood race needed her more than ever. Her ancestor cannot always be there for them. She needed to lead her race through the coming perilous era and survive in the end. But, for the first time in her life, she hesitated, feeling the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. Trunsoest, her future husband. The relationship between them was arranged by her ancestor. It should have been a political marriage. Nothing more, nothing less. Yet, things developed beyond her expectations. She fell in love with Trunsoest. And love made a fool of her. She completely ignored her ancestors' orders and instructions. Everything is now crashing down on her. The gods' alliance will soon be broken, chaos will reign supreme, submerging order. She knew Trunsoest too well to know what he'd do after witnessing the chaos of gods. At the time, as his wife and queen, she should stand with him, turning her back on her ancestor and her own race. Her heart contracted in pain at that thought. Love. Her lips raised in a bitter smile, as she kept praying to her ancestor for forgiveness. "I repent," she repeated as crimson blood flowed from her hands and knees. This was a self-inflicted punishment for her blasphemous actions. The crimson blood stained the ground, reflecting the statue of Earth Mother, which gleamed brightly in the moonlight, as if it were about to come to life. "My child," a soft voice was heard as the figure of Lilith appeared in place of the statue. Ads by PubFuture. However, Aurnia just trembled, still not daring to look at the goddess who descended after hearing her prayers. The goddess made her way over to Aurnia. She, too, knelt in front of Aurnia, her hands resting on Aurnia's clasped hands. A burst of green light erupted, illuminating Aurnia, healing her injuries. Lilith then pressed down on Aurnia's hands while placing her hand over her chin and forcing Aurnia to look at her. Tell me, pour it all out, she said gently, caressing Aurnia's head. I'm sorry, my lady. Aurnia whimpered. I'm sorry, my lady. I betrayed you, She went on to confess her feelings for Trunsoest and even mentioned the possibilities of the future. She didn't hide anything at all. Lilith nodded and stroked her hair as she listened. Her expression remained gentle. Love, she finally sighed. Her divine eyes flashed with complexity, which Aurnia missed as she was bowing and waiting for her judgment. Aurnia, Lilith said as she stood up. Follow your heart's desire and pursue your love. Aurnia jerked her head up, her eyes wide at her ancestor. However, Aurnia, you can't have it all. Lilith continued softly, lifting her up from her knees and holding her hands. So, pick, love or family, she asked softly, looking into Aurnia's eyes. Aurnia's heart was pierced by those gentle yet cruel words, forcing her to make a decision. Her hands were clenched, blood dripping from them. The minutes ticked by. Lilith waited patiently, her gaze fixed on Aurnia. Their figures were illuminated by the crimson moonlight. Aurnia finally let go of Lilith's hand and walked away from her. The crimson moonlight deepened and shone brightly on Lilith's figure. Ethereally, she said. You have my blessing, she smiled. Cherish your love. Now go, you have a new life ahead of you. Thank you, my lady. Aurnia bowed her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. Ads by PubFuture. She wiped her tears away as she turned away from her ancestor. She walked out, not looking back at her ancestor. Lilith stood motionless, her smile fading. With Aurnia's departure, the church doors were closed. Suddenly, she was hugged from behind, the hands of her lover locking around her hip. Are you all right? Akasis inquired, resting his chin on her shoulders. I'm fine, Lilith replied with a shake of her head. She placed her hand on his chest and leaned in. Really? Akasis inquired, his voice concerned. I'm fine, Lilith pouted. I was just thinking about the future and fate. What is their fate? She continued, looking at the closed door. Trunsoest and Aurnia, Akasis inquired, his brow furrowed, while his gaze was drawn to the door. Yes, Lilith tightened her grip on his hands and looked up at him. Their fate, Akasis murmured, his voice almost whisper-like. It's a tragic one. Lilith sighed. Her eyes showed no surprise, as if she expected this. She finally asked, ours. However, Akasis interrupted with a smile. Now, we don't have to be so pessimistic over this. Their situation is different and ours is different. So, we may end up different than them. Lilith asked, her voice trembling, her eyes looking for assurance in the man behind her. You already know the answer. Akasis said, tightening his hug. We will make sure of that. Lilith smiled, the heaviness in her heart dissipating slightly. Let's return, Akasis said, my painting is only halfway done. You descended here before then. Lilith's ears tinged in crimson, as she remembered the kind of painting that Akasis was drawing with her. Why do you have to draw me like that? She asked, glaring. It's art, Akasis answered, before kissing her lips. Their figures vanished from the cathedral in a flash of light. Chapter 112, Red Priest. The Palace of Eternity. The royal palace towered above the city of Backland, surrounded by the statues of the 6 gods. It emitted a divine aura, as if it were conjured from the dream of a god. In this imaginary palace, Alitsa Tudor walked back and forth in his room. His blue eyes gleamed in anger and madness. The room around him was a mess. Every piece of furniture was broken and twisted into pieces. The broken glasses littered the floor, gleaming brightly in sunlight. Alitsa walked, ignoring the racked state of his study, which was actually caused by his bout of anger. His hands were clenched, and his mind was racing to come up with a solution, or even a glimmer of hope for his perilous situation. Why, he thought, why did it end up like this? Why? Alitsa didn't know where it all went wrong. Just thinking about the possibilities behind that almost drove his mind to abyss of madness. Eternal blazing sun. He still remembers the smile of the eternal blazing sun when he handed over the characteristics of Prince of Abolition to him. Did the sun god always know the era would develop like this? Or did he himself cause all of this to happen? It doesn't actually matter at the end of the day to Alitsa, as things have already developed far beyond salvation for him. He now knew that the gods never bothered to give him a thought or consideration. In their eyes, he should always been a dead man walking. Just that thought caused his heart to burn with a flaring black fire mixed with hatred and madness. Boom! The walls of the study room collapsed, unable to bear the surging chaotic aura emanating from his figure. Alitsa expected something from the gods when they learned of his betrayal. However, there was only silence and indifference to his actions, as if they didn't bother to care at all. He looked at the towering statues of the gods through the window, his heart filled with raging emotions. In the end, he suppressed his hatred and madness, taking a deep breath. He needs to survive the convergence caused by the resurrection of His Majesty. No, he will survive and prove it to the gods. Just then, an image of the brass-haired man flashed through his mind. Trunsoest. Alitsa smiled bitterly as he thought about how things turned so different for the two of them. Trunsoest is the most beloved of the 6 gods, serving as the gods' representative on earth. Ads by PubFuture. Alitsa jeered at him in the past, calling him a puppet of the gods. Now, looking back, Trunsoest was the one who got the last laugh over him, ironically. So, what if Trunsoest was a puppet of the gods? He doesn't have to worry about the Black Emperor. He has the protection of the gods. Alitsa also discovered that Eternal Blazing Sun chose Trunsoest over him by bestowing the Hand of Order trait to Trunsoest. At that time, he didn't think much about it. However, he can now see clearly through the action of the Sun God. Alitsa really had the urge to pray to the Sun God and ask him, Why did you choose Trunsoest over me? He really wanted to know the answer, as the question was tormenting his heart. He was better than the coward in every way. However, the Sun God. He doesn't care. A gentle voice sounded from behind him, causing him to turn around abruptly. He almost attacked the intruder, but stopped himself after seeing who it was. His emotions also strangely calmed down at the sight of the intruder. The ravings of His Majesty that tormented his mind went silent as well. He finally felt peace in his heart and mind after a long period of suffering. Despite this, he didn't let down his guard at all, his vigilance only increasing after noticing his sudden change. He looked at the intruder with wariness and fear. Before him stood a priest clad in a simple white cloak and a silver cross. He had a gentle smile as he looked at Alitsa. Adam, angel of imagination. Alitsa looked at the son of the Creator in fear. Adam, king of angels of the visionary pathway, was an enigma to all, even gods. Alitsa knew Adam mostly stayed within the empire. The gods should have known it too, yet they did nothing. This alone was enough to show the might of the being in front of him. If he isn't wrong, Adam should also be above the Golden Order, considering his unrestrained actions throughout the century. His existence alone challenged the Golden Order. The Golden Order is the order established by Eternal Blazing Sun when the Empire was founded. It is a terrifying order, with rules and laws that bind every being in the Empire. Nobody can escape it, even him and Trunsoest, as well as the kings of angels, all follow the Golden Order. Only gods were above the order. They also had some influence over the Golden Order, though not as much as Eternal Blazing Sun. Yet, Adam should be above it as well, despite not being a god. Alitsa suddenly felt a tinge of jealousy, which he immediately suppressed as the clear eyes of Adam locked on him. Ads by PubFuture. Your Excellency, Adam. Alitsa finally spoke, giving enough respect to the being in front of him. He clearly knew the appearance of Adam at this precise moment was far from simple. It ignited hope in his dark heart. He was also surprised. After all, this was Backland, the capital of the empire. The influence of the Eternal Blazing Sun is highest here, yet Adam. He doesn't care. Adam said again, as if seeing through his doubts and questions, though his words now contained deep meaning. Alitsa was perplexed, obviously not understanding the meaning. Alitsa tutor, Adam continued in a gentle tone, not bothering to explain himself. The one who had been abandoned by the gods. Akas's already arranged your fate from the beginning. You are supposed to die when Solomon resurrects, he said, walking towards Alitsa. Alitsa was silent, his head down and hands clenched. Do you know they also decided the fate of your fellow consul not long ago? Adam asked, looking at the statues of gods through the windows. Alitsa looked up, his attention completely drawn to Adam, and asked, What did they decide for him, Your Excellency? Adam smiled. Under the suggestion of Akas's, the 7 gods decided to help him to become Justiciar. The words of Adam thundered into Alitsa's mind, shaking him to his core. What? He asked, astounded. Justiciar. Adam patiently elaborated. The preparations for the apotheosis ritual have already begun. With the help of gods, the ritual which should have taken at least decades to complete will now only take a year at most. Why? Alitsa yelled, why are they even helping him? They should know about the true nature of the Trunsoest. Even though he is a coward, he is someone who values order above all. Adam was silent, making it obvious that the Angel of Imagination was not going to answer this question. Alitsa clenched his fist, blood pouring out. His lips had a bitter smile. His eyes were flashing with memories of the past. It felt ironic that the first one to become a god among them was Trunsoest, who didn't have any such dream or wish of becoming a god, unlike him. He finally looked at Adam and asked, his eyes shimmering with hope and despair. Your Excellency, you shouldn't have come here just to inform me that. Adam still had a gentle smile, listening to him. He nodded and took out a black slate with an ancient aura and handed it to him while pointing at the writing at the top. Alitsa knew it was the blasphemy slate. He took it and looked at it without asking any further questions. Sequence 0 Red Priest. Ritual stirring up a war that sweeps the continent and gain victory. Ads by PubFuture. Alitsa Tutor, the only way you can survive the coming chaotic time is by becoming a god. Adam said, his golden eyes gleaming. Red Priest is the only pathway where you have a chance of becoming a god. You already completed the apotheosis ritual by stirring up the Seven-Nation War and destroying the Solomon Empire. But, Alitsa asked, his hand holding the blasphemy slate trembling. Switching to a non-adjacent pathway. This is the only way. Adam said, in his gentle voice, that sounded so cruel to Alitsa. Alitsa looked at the blasphemy slate. He knew Adam was right. There was no other way. All that awaited him on other paths was nothing but death or even fates worse than that. He remembered the promise that he had made to himself a few moments ago. No vel be in c om. Now, he made a new promise based on the previous one. He will survive and will bring down the gods themselves. Alitsa tightened his grip on the blasphemy slate, his eyes gleaming. He finally asked, looking at the Angel of Imagination. Why are you helping me? He wanted to know the motives of Adam. He wasn't a fool to think that the help of the Son of the Creator was free. There must be a price, a terrible price at that. The sunlight in the room deepened, illuminating the figure of Adam, who was silent for a moment before answering with a soft smile. It's the trend of the times. War, disorder, death, order. Black Emperor, eternal sleeper, Alitsa muttered subconsciously. Trunsoest Lord of Order, Adam finished for him. War, Alitsa looked at the title of Red Priest in the blasphemy slate. His voice quivering, is it fate? In a way, yes. Adam nodded, though, this fate is not yours as you have guessed. The war angel of the Creator shall ascend to the throne of God and blow the horns of war. He will be the sword of revenge for the fallen Creator. He will be the one to slay the traitors, the fallen angels of the Creator. That is written fate, Adam said, his voice soft yet indifferent. So, what is your choice? To remain chained by fate or to break it and usurp the throne of the Red Priest from Medici? Choose, Alitsa Tutor. The sunlight in the room became bright, brighter than ever. Yes, Alitsa said, his voice firm and his eyes gleaming in madness and craziness. He turned and looked at the sun in the sky, which was getting bigger and bigger by the moment. I will become the Red Priest, he declared boldly, looking at the eternal blazing sun. Adam nodded gently at the gargantuan sun. Then, he and Alitsa disappeared from the royal palace. Chapter 113, Golden Tree. Ontal Mountains, Trier. An illusory golden gate stood on the highest peak of the Ontal Mountains, radiating endless pure light. The gate had a mythical aura, making all yearn for the eternal paradise that lay within. It was Avalon, the divine kingdom of the eternal blazing sun, separated from reality by the illusory golden gate. A brass-haired young man was trekking towards the top of the mountain while gazing at the golden gate. He was none other than Trunsoest, who was on his way to meet with the eternal blazing sun. Trunsoest stared at the golden door, his mind wandering to his meeting with the gods. Before, he immediately accepted the offer from the gods without thinking it over properly. However, he did not regret his choice. Though he was still nervous whenever thinking about the offer, it was due to the fact that nothing was free in this world. He also understands why the gods helped him become the Justiciar. The empire needs a true emperor to maintain stability and order in the chaos and war to come. The emperor can only be a god, given the existence of the Black Emperor and the Emperor of the Underworld, both of whom were also gods. No vel be in c om. So the gods choose him as their candidate, because they are not willing to step on stage themselves. After all, they have been used to being the chess masters in control of all. Trunsoest realized that even if he became a god, the 7 gods would not consider him their equal. They will still see him as just a chess piece that can be manipulated to their liking. And he can understand their confidence. After all, he was only 1 against 7 of them. They can suppress him quite easily. When Trunsoest realized all of this, he was not at all furious. On the contrary, he was very glad. While they continue to underestimate him, he will bid for the appropriate time. He will ultimately turn the tables on them. He'll destroy their chessboard, forcing the gods to come on stage. He knew it would be very difficult to accomplish his lofty goals. The eternal blazing sun is the first and greatest obstacle in his path. His heart stiffened when he thought about the sun god. Trunsoest glanced towards the golden gate while suppressing his feelings and thoughts. He took a stance of prayer with his hands clasped. He prayed, "Eternal blazing sun, inextinguishable light, embodiment of order, god of contracts, guardian of business. I pray for you to open the doors of Avalon." Trunsoest omitted a honorific title of the eternal blazing sun that had been used for the previous century, embodiment of knowledge. The honorific name, however, ought to have been changed at this point given that the eternal blazing sun lost the hermit uniqueness. As he prayed, the air grew oppressive and mysterious, and then a blinding beam of light fell on his praying figure. The glaring light drove Trunsoest to close his eyes. Then, the light went out as fast as it came. He opened his eyes, making sure of it. He found himself in a lengthy hallway lined with statues and paintings. And, in front of him, was a huge white door. Trunsoest was well aware that this was Avalon, dwelling of the eternal blazing sun. He had previously visited this place a century earlier, at the conclusion of the War of the 7 Nations, in which the 6 gods had won. He inhaled deeply as he made his way to the door. He used his power to restrain his thoughts and feelings, just in case. On its own, the door opened. He entered through it. A chamber filled with light, massive pillars, and a silver table with 2 chairs met him. Eternal blazing sun was present at the silver table, staring at Trunsoest with indifferent eyes. "Your Ex." Trunsoest greeted and bowed. "Sit down." His greetings were cut off by eternal blazing sun, who motioned for him to take a seat. Trunsoest complied, taking the seat. He faced the eternal blazing sun who sat right in front of him. His heart was nervous. Eternal blazing sun, the embodiment of order. He was extremely anxious in front of the sun god because of the Golden Order. The eternal blazing sun created the Golden Order when the empire was first established. He was present when eternal blazing sun established it. At that moment, he became aware of the sun god's might. However, until his elevation to the status of archangel, this feeling was only momentary. With his ascension to archangel, his understanding of reality deepened, and he was finally able to observe the order in reality that bound everything in existence together. That is when he realized the truth. His heart was brimming with terror as he finally understood the Golden Order for what it was. Eternal blazing sun created the Golden Order, which is a system of concepts and laws made manifest by the sun god. The Golden Order resembles a golden luminous tree, with roots and branches that entwine with the fabric of the reality. I took inspiration from Elden Ring for the Order of Occuses. It's a phenomenal game. Observing its golden branches expand, entwining with reality, and gradually altering everything in accordance with its principles rattled him to the core. The Golden Order was gradually progressing toward becoming a prototype of eternal order. Trunsoest was alluding to the true order of reality that holds the entire cosmos together when he used the phrase eternal order. He was confident in his conclusions because he found that the Golden Order was developing in a way that would eventually lead to the formation of the way of the world. Equally scary is the power that the Golden Order wields. It has control over reality and can alter its laws and conceptions through order. The Golden Order has the capacity to enslave the entire empire to its will. Only the King of Angels may have a chance to defy the Golden Order. Eternal blazing sun and other gods were in charge of the Golden Order. However, the eternal blazing sun should have more authority than other deities. Trunsoest once more failed to comprehend the motivations and purposes of gods. Why did they create something so terrifying? Aren't they afraid of the possibility that eternal blazing sun usurps full control over Golden Order and has power over them all? Did they want to rule the entire reality? How did they? His head was filled with questions and doubts, which unknowingly made his spine shiver. You seem to have a lot of questions. Eternal Blazing Sun said with his trademark smile. You can ask away. I am all ears. Don't hold back. This is a necessary process. Trunsoest faced the sun god. He was overcome with a plethora of feelings, including hate, dread, fury, and so forth. His mind was racing with images of the golden tree and the chaos that the eternal blazing sun had wrought. Finally, in a raspy voice, he inquired, "Why, eternal blazing sun ought to be able to understand everything with only that query," so he didn't elaborate. "Well," Eternal Blazing Sun replied with a sigh while reclining in his chair. "Let's start with chaos." "What is chaos?" he asked, placing his palm on his chin. Chapter 114, Golden Order. "What is chaos?" questioned Eternal Blazing Sun. Eternal Blazing Sun rose from his seat and continued without waiting for his response. "Chaos is the most dangerous thing in existence." The surroundings changed as Eternal Blazing Sun's ominous voice was heard, unveiling an endless cosmos. Trunsoest's eyes were drawn to the magnificent cosmos. He was bemused in his heart. Even though he had previously heard Bethel sing praises about the grandeur of the cosmos, witnessing it for himself gobsmacked him. "Is this the cosmos?" His voice quavered a little in excitement. Eternal Blazing Sun ignored his query and went on, gesturing for him to rise up as well. "Chaos is all around us. All the time. It is volatile and powerful." With those words, the scene in front of Trunsoest altered to reveal a ravenous darkness devouring the very stars of the cosmos. He could also feel the fundamental foundations of reality crumbling. The eternal order was disintegrating. The surging darkness was chaos. Order is organizing chaos. It is what brings balance and stability to cosmos. It is what delays the inevitable end. His immediate surroundings suddenly changed. Out of the fabric of reality sprouted a golden luminous tree. Its branches and roots entwined with the reality of the cosmos. It re-established the order of the cosmos. The order restrained the chaos. The cosmos's brilliance and vibrancy were restored as the lights of the stars re-emerged. The voice of Eternal Blazing Sun had Trunsoest's undivided attention now. He understood the significance of Eternal Blazing Sun's remarks. It might even provide a final answer to all of his uncertainties and inquiries. Finally, pointing at the constrained chaos, he asked, "The Black Emperor." Eternal Blazing Sun snorted, "I can see why you're confused. Back then, Solomon sought to twist the truth more than once. The main authority of Black Emperor is disorder. Nothing more and nothing less." Trunsoest noticed something strange and questioned the sun god, who was smiling and looking at him as if he already knew what he was going to ask. "So there isn't even a single pathway that represents chaos among the 22? His voice was hesitant in doubt. Eternal Blazing Sun nodded, saying, "Yes, there isn't a pathway that symbolizes chaos. Everything in the universe is separate from and subjugated to chaos. It is not something that a god can directly rule over." His words caused the environment around them to alter, revealing a stunning blue planet. Trunsoest had a gut feeling that this planet was his home. But the sun god continued before he could pause and marvel at this. "Do you know what occurs when the equilibrium between chaos and order is shattered?" Trunsoest was about to respond, but he restrained himself after observing Eternal Blazing Sun's somber expression. "The original creator will awaken. The end of the cosmos will be heralded by he who wields the power of chaos. Look." Eternal Blazing Sun pointed at the earth. Trunsoest turned to face the earth in front of him. The corner of his eye also caught the disappearance of Eternal Blazing Sun. But his attention was pulled to the planet, as he got a dreadful feeling of impending doom from it. Crack! His home planet, Earth, started to split open as a sea of infinite colors emerged from beneath it. The reality started to crumble. Trunsoest felt something awakening from within the earth. It was something beyond, something detached, something primordial. Boom! An illusionary, colorless light burst forth from the planet. It instantly lit up everything in existence, shattering and returning everything back to chaos. Under the brightness of the light, Trunsoest felt his mind literally disintegrate. He saw it all come to an end. He watched as his empire collapsed. He watched as his love was ripped apart under the might of the illusionary light. He watched as the sky, the moon, and the sun were shattered. He witnessed the twilight of the gods. The gods, who tower above all, fell from their heavenly thrones. In the illusionary light, their bodies and souls were shredding one after another. Indescribable beings fled in a desperate attempt to avoid the impending doom, only to perish in the process. As he witnessed it all, his hopes, goals, and dreams were torn asunder. Eventually, even his order crumbled. He was powerless to interfere, all he could do was watch as everything he cherished was destroyed in front of his eyes. He was having trouble thinking since his mind was literally disintegrating, yet these visions remained vivid as always, driving him farther and deeper into despair. November LBJNN. Trunsoest was tumbling into the chaos as it engulfed the entire creation. Ads by PubFuture. His mind was suddenly twisted by a plethora of information and knowledge. It felt as though a sharp object had pierced right through to his brain before twisting. The searing pain melted his brain even further. Barrier, son of chaos, 9 Sephirots, nation of disorder, above the sequence, pillars, great old ones. No, how can things be this way? He began to spiral into an abyss of his own despair and hopelessness, on the verge of losing himself forever. Wake up! A thunderous voice shattered everything around him as it blasted through his mind and soul, waking him up. Trunsoest then found himself back in his chair, facing the eternal blazing sun. They appeared to have never actually gotten up from the chairs, as if everything that followed was simply a horrible nightmare. Yes, it ought to be a nightmare. While falling out of his chair and gasping for air, Trunsoest made a conscious attempt to persuade himself. It should just be a nightmare. With tears welling in his eyes, he knelt on the ground. His scarred heart was struggling desperately to deny the truth. The more you deny, the more you lose control. He struggled to look up as an indifferent voice rang out. He caught a glimpse of the eternal blazing sun indifferently observing him. He was already on the point of losing control, as he observed that his body was slowly disintegrating into brass lights. In spite of this, he asked the sun god in a scratchy voice that was audibly racked with pain and anguish. Why did you show me all of this? He really wanted to know. That didn't give him any answers to his questions. It only made him have a complete existential crisis, from which he still hadn't recovered yet. Eternal blazing sun sighed in exasperation as he shook his head. He spoke with indifference while his golden eyes shimmered. To help you realize, Trunsoest, to alter your perspective such that it is divine. Despite being an archangel, you continue to view the world through human eyes. The principles and ideals of human civilization continue to bind you. You hate me, right? For upsetting your precious order by being the true disruptor. How absolutely ridiculous. The sun god waved his hand at him while mockingly laughing. Trunsoest was healed as a beam of light fell on him, saving him from the embrace of death. Trunsoest wasn't in the mood to rejoice, as feelings of rage, despair and helplessness overflowed his heart as he listened to the laughter of the eternal blazing sun. Ads by PubFuture. He rose from his kneeling position while having the sun god in his sight. Eternal blazing sun continued, in between his fits of mocking laughter. I'll tell you the truth, cold and clear. As our authority is a component of reality itself, the gods you so despise are a part of the eternal order. We are the ones who keep the chaos at bay. That caused Trunsoest's eyes to widen. While gazing at him, the sun god said, "You finally understand, right?" The sun god grinned menacingly as a dreadful, boundless divine aura emanated from him. His aura morphed into a glowing golden tree. It was the golden order. My will is the true order. I was never the disruptor of order. I am the embodiment of order. I define what order is. The sun god's words boomed into Trunsoest's head, tearing apart his perspective before rebuilding it and enabling him to see things from a new perspective. His eyes started to shine with a divine light. The golden tree behind the sun god caught his attention immediately. Now, he understood the tree's real purpose. The golden order assisted and assimilated with the eternal order while also strengthening reality. Its true purpose was to keep the balance between order and chaos in the world. The sun god continued, implying the golden tree. This is my order. The golden order is the name I gave it. It is a set of concepts and rules that I and other gods have made manifest. I built this order using the principle of regression. It means, regression is the pull of meaning, that all things yearn eternally to converge. The law of Beander characteristic convergence. Trunsoest made a valid guess right away, but he had the feeling that the principle of the golden order should symbolize something deeper and more complex. Trunsoest, this is my order. It's now time for you to think of one on your own. Instead of a humane order, it should be a divine one. He quickly nodded in accord after hearing the stern words of eternal blazing sun. Now go. The sun god immediately waved his hand, illuminating everything in his field of vision with light. You may only return once you have accomplished your divine order. Wait, Trunsoest said quickly, while closing his eyes from the glare. He still has a ton of questions for the sun god. You can access my golden order. The sun god said, It will resolve all of your doubts and questions. I had enough of telling people the truth. The next time, I should let Ammonizes handle it. Before everything in his field of vision turned white and rendered him unconscious, he even heard the grumble of the sun god. Chapter 115. Sword of Creator. To say Medici was angry would be an understatement. The war angel felt like his world was slowly but surely falling apart. The cause of all this was none other than Occases. Medici had heard of what people call Occases, the great and merciful sun god. Ironically, Occases was anything but kind and merciful. The white angel was a monster just like him. Occases was the source of wars and destruction in the third epoch, although Medici was very reluctant to admit it himself. It was the truth. He may be almost the embodiment of war, but in the end, he was the sword of the Creator. He only unsheathed himself for war at the will of his lord. However, Occases was different. He was unrestrained. He waged the war just because he could. He caused disaster on a whim. He was a walking calamity. What really pissed Medici off was how easily that bastard got away with it. It was as if people purposely ignored the monster he was, focusing only on the perfect persona that he showed to the audience. To top it all off, even the Lord was partial to Occases. The very thought that literally caused Medici to erupt in a rage. The throne on which he sat melted into liquid as the heat of the flames enveloped the room, igniting it all. It was unfair. It was really unfair. He shedded blood, sweat, and tears for the Lord, acting as his sword, but Occases was the one who got all the praise when all he got was a mere nod, just a fucking nod. He was not angry with the Creator. He was just mad at himself, mad at his own incompetence, mad at Occases. Could it be because Occases was the first to follow the Lord? Is it due to the fact that Occases was the angel of the Lord's pathway? Questions filled his head, trying to find a reason why Occases was more favored by the Lord. He was better than that bastard in every way, yet, regardless, he still pushed himself to the limit, just to get an actual acknowledgement from his Lord. He somehow managed to push himself to face a god, not just any god, but the god of the abyss, Farubati. The terrifying ancient god who made even the new gods tremble in fear. He stood before the god of filth, struggling against the embodiment of the abyss itself. It happened during the Abyss War, which the Occases started on a whim. He felt it absolutely absurd now that one of the biggest events of the third epoch occurred solely as a result of a sudden whim of Occases. Due to the oppression of the Creator, Farubati was already restless. He was bidding for the right time. The provocation of Occases managed to give him just that. War raged in the lands in between, dyeing it in blood and fire. Farubati just wanted to check the attitude of Creator with the war, but things escalated and got out of his control. Umbella and Badil joined the war because the invasion started affecting anchors. They can no longer sit on the sidelines. The entry of the gods into the war took the situation to a whole new level. Farubati couldn't hold back even if he wanted to. So he went all out, regardless of the consequences. Farubati was a mad god, after all. The abyss has descended on the continent. It was what broke the camel's back. All the gods and the king of angels were forced to enter the battlefield. His lord forcefully grafted the battlefield into the astral world to prevent the destruction of the world. Here is where Medici faced the lord of the abyss. He still remembers his heart beating with excitement and elation at the prospect of facing a true god. He wanted to push his limits. He was also very cognizant of his own madness and desperation at that time. Medici, however, did not care. The result of the battle was as one would expect. He was literally trashed by the lord of the abyss and God himself corrupted by the filth. He still got up for battle, again and again, with only his sheer will supporting the last of him. He held Lord of Abyss, giving enough time for Ammonizes to arrive on the battlefield. The night descended, bringing peace and tranquility to chaos. The war had ended. He was cured. However, reality soon slapped him in the face, shattering his dreams and hopes. The Creator was still same to him. He got a nod, as a form of acknowledgement. A simple nod at that. And Occases was off the hook for causing such a disaster on a whim, once again. It was then that Medici really realized that he was just a sword of the Creator, nothing more, nothing less. He tried to be content with his status, despite his feelings. He was just the sword of the Creator. Regardless of his feelings, time passed on. Rose Redemption was formed under Sasrir's leadership. The final war had begun. Everything went according to the Lord's plan. Until the bastard suddenly told that he would go and check on the situation of the Creator. He immediately knew something was wrong with Akas's. Not only him, but many should also have felt it. He wanted to stop that bastard from getting anywhere close to the Lord. However, his actions and his voice were silenced by the indifferent gods. No-vel-bjn.c Om. They let Akas's step into the twilight sun. Then it happened. The betrayal. The feast of betrayal. Akas's betrayed the one who cared most about him, the one who raised him, the one who gave him everything. The Creator was betrayed by the one he trusted the most. Irony at its best. He knew his thoughts were blasphemous, but it was a cold, hard truth that he had no way of denying. Medici lost his lord and his home as well as everything on that dreadful day. He literally became a vagrant with Ouroboros and could only suppress his burning rage and escape from the eyes of traitors and gods. However, things improved when they found the true Creator and took refuge with the hanged man after finding a shadow of their Lord in him. Time went on. Akas's became a god with other traitors. Then, Akas's did something that angered him to the very core of his being. Akas's tampered with history. He made the world forget all about their Lord while he soaked in the glory of saving mankind from a disaster that was caused by him in the first place. A hypocrite at his finest. Medici also struggled to comprehend how Akas's constantly seemed to win. Whatever the circumstances, he managed to come out on top. On the night of the red moon, Akas's had to face a real cosmic pillar. In the final battle of the War of the Seven Nations, Akas's triumphed completely. The incident on Venus forced Akas's to deal with an outer god once more. The list is never ending. Despite the difficulties and the danger in his path, Akas's always won in the end. It was as if, what do they call it these days, It was as if he was the protagonist. Now, the United Empire is about to collapse. Akas's will immediately be besieged by gods on all sides. Yet, Medici had a gut feeling that Akas's would come out victorious, like he always does. He will take a step closer to becoming God Almighty and will gain a significant advantage over the Lord. Although it was only a far-fetched guess, Medici believed in it wholeheartedly. Medici had always been holding himself back until now. And, despite the warning and persuasion from the Lord, he finally decided. He can't allow the era to develop this. He needs to change it. His Lord always considered him as his sword. Then, he shall be his sword of revenge. He will slay Akas's with his own hand. Until then, he will not rest. One may wonder where his confidence came from. He has a way, a dangerous way to achieve his goal. He would have worried about the consequences before, but not anymore. He will be the sword of vengeance for his Lord. Medici suddenly noticed his prey slowly entering into his trap, completely oblivious. He rose from his melted throne grabbing his red sword, and making his way outside of the ruins. Everything is going according to his plan. He will have his revenge soon. He will bathe in the golden blood of Akas's and tear his body apart with bare hands. Medici smiled. His smile told volumes of his madness and anger. His eyes gleamed with craziness, which was deepening by the moment. Suddenly, the space behind Medici shimmered, revealing a twisted city emanating a cataclysmic aura. The war angel didn't seem to notice the presence of the twisted city, obliviously walking in his path of revenge. In the shadows, Adam stood watching Medici. His eyes seemed to shimmer with actual pity. However, this emotion faded away, giving way to indifference. He finally looked into the shadows and nodded. Caw. A crow flew out, following the war angel. Chapter 116, Island of Peril. At the junction between the northern continent and the southern continent, an island covered in ruins was present, surrounded by a vast ocean. The island goes by the name, Island of Peril. It would also go by another infamous title in the future, Bansi Harbor. It was given that name by angels due to the many legends surrounding it. Some say that the Black Emperor and True Creator established their alliance on this island. While others say it was where the elf king Sanaithrium fell, his body crumbling around the Island of Peril. The legends weren't without some ground. The entire island and the ocean around it were corrupted by the remnant power of the gods. The perilous island was shrouded in shadows. There was a ruined black mausoleum perched on the top of the mountains. From time to time, a flash of pure light erupted from within the ruins, driving away the shadows temporarily before going out. The ocean around the island surged with waves taller than skyscrapers as the stormy sky lit up with streaks of lightning. An ominous chill had set in, providing the seemingly appropriate backdrop for the cataclysmic events to come. A red light flickered on the island shrouded in shadows, driving away a portion of thick shadows and revealing a man with red hair bound by crimson chains. The red chains tightened, tearing at his flesh and shattering his bones as the man cried out in agony. His screams made the shadows around him flicker, as if they were reacting to him. They manifested as ghostly devils that swirled all around him, intensifying the ominous and sinister atmosphere. Spark! A flash of red fire shot out of the darkness and landed directly before the screaming man. Ads by PubFuture. Suddenly, a crimson fire erupted from the curtain of shadows. It started to engulf the island shrouded in shadowy ocean. It all began to burn in the scarlet flames. The demons screamed in agony before vanishing with the rest of the shadowy ocean. Heat seeped into the air as the scarlet flames whirled around the screaming man. The man's flesh began to scorch, making his pain even worse. A figure dressed in black armor suddenly emerged out of the red flames. At the sight of the screaming man, his lips formed a sinister smirk. The War Angel, Medici. Sauron. Medici spoke in a mocking tone. Look how easily you fell into my calculations. Are you sure that you are a hunter? In order to set up a trap for Sauron and Einhorn, Medici leveraged his position of authority deriving from his uniqueness. Red Priest has authority that can alter reality to some extent. It is an evolution and combination of the powers of conspirator and conqueror. It essentially makes the claim that we can conquer everything, including reality. Medici set up his seamless trap on the island of peril, using the law of the convergence of Beander characteristics as his foundation. He picked this island because of its distinctiveness. It was tainted by the remaining power of 4 gods. There were powers that belonged to Occuses, Solomon, Sanaithrium, and ultimately his lord. The island was shrouded in the remnants like a dense fog, hidden from the gaze of gods and other kings of angels. This is the reason Medici picked this location. However, he was aware that this cover-up wouldn't last long if the gods detected any abnormality or disturbance. November LBJNN. Ads by PubFuture. However, Medici is certain that he will be able to accomplish his objective in silence, keeping the gods ignorant of his actions. The thought of success crossed the god of war's mind, and he laughed madly inside. Even though he had used his own hands to destroy the last of his lord's divine power, the War Angel didn't seem noticeably out of the ordinary in his actions and behavior. The crimson fire blazed, as Medici made his way towards the bound Sauron. He then caught his scarred chin and lifted it up, making Sauron look right into his blazing crimson eyes. You are pathetic, Sauron. Medici sneered, tightening his hold on the jaw. Sauron whimpered in pain, but his eyes filled with hatred always stayed on Medici. He rattled the chains heavily in pain and rage. Futile resistance, Medici scorned. His crimson eyes suddenly gleamed in light of madness. Slap. The War Angel slapped the chin of Sauron, causing him to let out a blood-curdling scream, as his jaw separated from his mouth and flew into ocean of crimson flames. The stream of blood from his broken mouth dyed his robes and chains scarlet. Despite all of this, the hateful eyes of Sauron still remained on Medici, not moving away an inch. Medici narrowed his eyes at Sauron. Glare all you want, it is not going to change your pathetic fate. You are nothing but a broken shell of a man, Sauron. Tell me, how did you feel when you were like a dog wagging a tail just to gain the favor of that bastard, only for him to completely ignore you? Let me guess, it was not humiliation or rage, was it? He continued, examining the reaction on the broken face of Sauron, who finally flinched at his question and looked down. As expected, the War Angel cocked his brow. You felt disappointment. Now, it is not at all insulting to call you a dog, as you are already one. Ads by PubFuture. Sauron kept his head down, his face covered in his own shadows. Now, don't be so downhearted. Medici chuckled, that bitch Einhorn is also on his way. The War Angel made sure of his efficiency in his trap. He even went further to tamper with reality to increase the convergence between them. Of course, he knew this would also most likely attract the attention of Cheek, the primordial demoness. She had become obsessed with him in recent years, looking for the uniqueness in him. Still, he made preparations even for that situation. He got the blessing of the Lord. However, Ouroboros was strangely silent. Well, he was always silent. But this time was clearly different. He could feel it. The last time he had been like this was during Occuses' betrayal. Occuses and Ouroboros were there for each other through thick and thin. The snake was the only one who had been able to put up with the menace named Occuses. They also had a lot in common. They could truly be considered friends. From all of this, one can easily understand that Ouroboros was affected the most by the betrayal of Akas's. He changed a lot after that. He'd also been avoiding anything related to Akas's. Coming back now, the silence of Ouroboros reminded him of that dreadful day. Nevertheless, Medici pushed the doubts and warnings in his heart aside and still went along with his plan. He really didn't want to hold back anything any longer. He wanted to make Akas's to pay for everything. At that thought, Medici's lips rose to form a grim smile. Suddenly, a laughter filled with mockery and pity reverberated around him. Medici turned and looked back, his eyes widening in rage. Aemon stood before him, adjusting his monocle while laughing at him. Sauron had disappeared from the crimson chains. Lil, Raven, he snarled at the Angel of Time. Chapter 117, City of Calamity. Oh, Medici, Aemon sighed, his laughter dying away. Fate always seemed to turn her back on you. He straightened his monocle, his eyes flashing with pity. Pity, Medici laughed, his laughter causing the crimson flames to blaze and swirl around them. It became an inferno, making the surrounding space around the island as hot as magma. The inferno rose high, connecting with the dark sky above the island, coloring it crimson. The sea around the island also surged violently, trying to smother the rising crimson flames. The Elven King's remaining power began to act on instinct, trying to quell the crimson flames. As the battle between water and fire continued, the situation inside the blazing pillar of fire at the edge of the island literally heated up by the moment. Sparks of crimson fire swept over the figure of Aemon, who kept glitching in his place. The fire that burned the very fabric of reality didn't seem to harm the Angel of Time in the least. It was as if Aemon had become an error in reality, completely disregarding the damage brought by the crimson flames. In this ocean of flames, the god of war and the god of deceit confronted each other after almost a millennia. Lil, Raven, Medici smiled, his menacing smile illuminated by the crimson flames. It seems you have forgotten the time when I burned all your feathers. And you just ran off complaining to the Lord. He raised his red sword and pointed it at the Angel of Time. Shall we see if you've improved from the past? He sneered, his form transforming into countless afterimages that encircled the Angel of Time in all directions. An invisible tremor erupted from his afterimages, engulfing reality in crimson flames. It was his will that invaded reality and conquered it as his own. His will covered the glitching figure of the Angel of Time, erasing the error in reality and forcing the Angel of Time to return to normal. All of his afterimages manifested at the same time. They all thrusted their swords at the Angel of Time, sealing the fate of Aemon. While carrying out his plans, Medici was somewhat expecting a disruption or problem to arise. But, still, he didn't think it would be in the form of the Raven in the end. He didn't hold back, knowing that the presence of the Raven would only create chaos. And, by the looks of it, the Raven wasn't here for a happy reunion either. Aemon was met with a storm of sword thrusts, each capable of decimating islands. They attacked him from all sides, preventing him from escaping. He tucked his hands behind his back and smiled calmly. The monocle over his right eye reflected the entire ocean of flames. Then, for a brief moment, the entire reality and phantoms of Medici glitched together before returning to normal. Medici quickly lost control of reality, which fell into the Amon's hands. The Angel of Time created a loophole in his control over reality. Then, he stole his control over reality by using that as a backdoor. Aemon was completely unharmed by the fury of sword thrusts as he was in control of reality. He destroyed all of the Medici's afterimages with a wave of his hand, leaving only the main body. Medici, he sighed and shook his head. It's best if you put down your sword and stop jumping to conclusions. I'm not here to battle you. I'm only here to make you see the truth. When he saw his sincere yet pitying expression, Medici only felt rage bubbling within him, almost like a volcano about to erupt. Aemon, he snarled, his aura cataclysmic. Boom, a streak of crimson lightning appeared and headed for Aemon, disintegrating reality in its path. Seeing his attempt at persuasion fail, Aemon shrugged, turning to look back into the flames, nodding. With his nod, the lightning and flames froze before being extinguished by a mighty force that engulfed the entire island. Medici felt an aura, a powerful aura that reminded him of the aura of his lord. Though it wasn't as gentle as that one, it was oppressive and suffocating. It knocked him to his knees in an instant. At the same time, numerous crimson chains appeared around him, binding him and sealing his authority. Any thoughts of resistance were also stolen by Aemon. It was ironic how the tables had turned against him. The hunter became the prey, falling obliviously into a trap. Medici looked up at the angel of imagination, his eyes gleaming with rage and hatred. "Why?" he roared. "Why are you stopping me? Look at yourself, Medici," Adam said. "You will have your answer." The gentle voice of Adam echoed into Medici's mind, carrying enormous power. It shattered all the influences in his mind that were tampering with his perception. Medici peered inside himself, alarmed by the sudden change. Ads by Pubfuture. Then his face turned pale at the sight of his soul. His soul was covered in countless spots, dyed in a mixture of iron and blood. No, he'd been corrupted by the thing he'd been betting on to use against Akas's. No, he might have always been corrupted by that thing. It could have been influencing all of his decisions, manipulating him. Wait, what exactly is that thing? Medici was stunned. However, before he could even process everything, a mutation occurred. That thing seemed to have taken notice, as the crimson spots in his soul began to emit a blinding crimson light. Ah! Medici screamed in agony as the crimson light tore apart his soul before shooting out of his body. Aemon appeared in front of Medici. His monocle reflected the trembling figure of Medici while flashing in deep darkness with an aura of tranquility. Medici's screams died away as he fell asleep under the influence of darkness. Aemon then looked up at the sky, his face solemn. The crimson light reached the sky, transforming into a phantom of a twisted city, emitting a cataclysmic light. It was none other than the city of Calamity. With a loud metaphysical boom, the island of peril seemed to tremble to its very foundations, under the influence of City of Calamity. But it wasn't just the island. A wave spread out and even deep underground, shaking the entire northern and southern continents, passing through the abyss, forsaken land of gods, and even through the barrier of ethereal gray fog at the end of the world. The entire world, including the western continent, was shaking to its very core. Aemon, sensing all of this, looked calmly at the city of disaster. He seemed to have anticipated this. He turned to face Adam, who nodded gently. Aemon let out an exasperated sigh before doing something completely unexpected. Akas's, he yelled at the sky. The air became scorching hot as Akas's divine gaze was cast here before any other gods. Ads by Pubfuture. Akas's divine gaze instantly narrowed at the phantom of the City of Calamity. Then, snap. With that snap, a phantom of golden tree appeared right next to the City of Disaster. It was the Golden Order. Aemon turned to face the golden tree, his monocle gleaming in the illusory light. He intended to use his power to create a loophole in the Golden Order that would allow Akas's to gain complete control of the Golden Order, overriding the powers of the other 6 gods. However, it will be only temporary. Even though he and his brother are powerful, a remnant power of Serphorit is beyond them. This may give gods headaches, not to mention them. So, they called upon Akas's, who was only one with an actual way to deal with this. It was the Golden Order. N-O-V-E, in .c ohm. However, the order was far too powerful and complex. The loophole created by Aemon will be promptly deleted by the power of the other gods in the Golden Order. If Aemon became the heir, he might have been able to accomplish this feat, but not now. Adam closed his eyes and prophesied, noticing the problem. Akas's temporarily took control of the Golden Order. The golden tree shimmered as a symbol of the blazing sun appeared above it. Immediately, the gods felt their hold on the Golden Order fade away. Akas's took complete control of the Golden Order with the assistance of the Sons of Creator. Akas's Golden Order immediately acted, completely concealing this location from the prying eyes of other gods. During this time, the City of Calamity was not idle. It was attempting to break through the seal and send its power into the outside world. Sensing the threat from the Golden Tree, the City of Calamity wanted to act. However, the Golden Order shrouded the city, suppressing it. "I shall have order." A deep voice thundered across the sky and earth as the luminescent tree emitted a shimmer of golden light, illuminating the City of Calamity. The light annihilated the concept of calamity brought by Sephiroth. Crack, boom, the phantom of a city crumbled away into the void, while some of its remanent power fell and showered the island of peril, corrupting it. The rumbling of the world finally stopped after 8 seconds, with no harm visible, only the world shaking on itself. Chapter 118, World Shake. The sun shone through the parting clouds the next morning, illuminating the world, which was still reeling from the prior night's events. The world always experiences various changes due to war and the ascension of gods. But, mortals' feeble minds cannot bear the knowledge of events, so all those changes always tend to go unnoticed. This could be clearly seen during Artisan's ascension. When he became a god, the light of civilization erupted, illuminating almost every aspect of human civilization. It also nearly merged the spirit and material worlds. However, these changes went unseen by all below angels. The last night, however, was different. It was all over the front pages of newspapers. The world shake, as they called it, had occurred all over the world, and for 8 seconds, the very foundations of the world rumbled. From frail mortals to all-powerful gods, everyone felt the rumbling. As one might expect, the world went into a frenzy, causing chaos all around. Civilization's brilliant minds attempted but failed to discover its cause. When material power fails, people always turn to mysteries. And, turn they did, they attempted to divine the cause of the world shake, only to suffer a fate worse than death, regardless of their sequence. So they finally turned to the gods, but their prayers went unanswered. In the end, the world shake event became a mystery among men, with numerous fabricated legends surrounding it. However, it was not a mystery to everyone. The gods could guess what actually occurred, and they weren't pleased at all. Fanapotter, the city of life. The city was decked out in evergreen, right down to its glittering gold crown. The church bells rang as the sun shone through the clouds, illuminating Lilith, who was checking her dress in the mirror. Lilith was always nervous nowadays, nervous about the change of times and the impending war. This feeling has been heightened by recent events. She didn't have to think long to figure out that last night's events were most likely related to Occuses. Ads by PubFuture. After all, Occuses took temporary control of the Golden Order, bypassing their authorities. It also occurred shortly after the world shake began. So the others had no trouble connecting the dots, which all pointed to her lover, Occuses. And they were enraged, particularly Harabergen, Leodoro, and Artisan. They demanded an explanation from Occuses right away. Others weren't much better. Ammonizes backed Harabergen and Leodoro's demand, while her son remained silent. It was only her who stood with Occuses. Given the Golden Order, it was to be expected. The Order was a structure imbued with all of their power. The gods supported the establishment of the Golden Order, for the sake of world stability, particularly in light of the impending events. They don't want chaos to spread from their fights and inadvertently destroy the world. Lilith also knew Occuses had his own agenda for the Golden Order, as he always does. Returning now, the Golden Order wielded terrifying power, and if it fell into the hands of one person, they could temporarily rule over the gods themselves. This was what made them all nervous. It didn't matter if it was only temporary, because the prospect of Occuses achieving that was enough for all of them to turn their backs on him. As a result, they demanded an explanation from Occuses right away. Occuses dismissed their demands without batting an eye. His action didn't surprise her at all. The others couldn't do much else because the contract was restricting them all. So they left, suppressing their rage in their hearts, and bid for the right time. This incident occurred at the worst possible time. The war for Pillar was just around the corner. Despite her trepidation, she had faith in Occuses. He always makes plans for everything. He should have a reason for doing this. He should have. Lilith finally sighed, suppressing her nervousness and focusing on the present. Ads by PubFuture. She was double-checking her dress for the upcoming wedding she was attending with Occuses. It's not just any wedding, it's Trunsoest and Aurnia's wedding. She was surprised when Occuses suggested that they attend the wedding. After all, they were gods. However, Occuses didn't seem to care. He kept asking if she wanted to join him to the wedding. In the end, she agreed to his request, despite knowing it would expose their relationship to public scrutiny and cause problems. No-vel-b in .c ohm. However, she didn't care anymore. She simply wants to spend all of her time with him. She just can't get enough of him. Occuses. Lilith smiled. There was a lot that happened in the previous century. Despite never telling each other, they already knew a lot about each other. Her true identity, in particular. Occuses is well aware. In the middle of the century, she confirmed it. She didn't confront him, though, because doing so would violate her concealment. In terms of the concealment, she told Ammonizes about her relationship with Occuses, hoping she would be considerate given the gravity of the situation. She also had no idea how Occuses had discovered her identity on his own. After hearing her words, Ammonizes fell silent for a moment. She then waved her hands, indicating that she needed time to think about it. And Lilith didn't tell Ammonizes that Acaces already found out. In the end, she let it be. Despite how unnerving the situation was, there was nothing else that could be done. Though, deep down, she had a feeling that this was all going to end soon, one way or another. Knock. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts, prompting her to peer through the door and then smile. Speak of the devil, it was Acaces. Before heading out the door, she double-checked herself in the mirror to ensure she was absolutely perfect. She opened the door to find Acaces leaning on the doorframe, checking his watch. He smiled as he looked up at her. You're stunning, he said this while lightly kissing her lips. As always. Well, Lilith punched him on the chest lightly. Enough with the sweet words, what the hell were you thinking of pulling a stunt like that? I just did what I always do. Acaces shrugged with a laid-back smile. That was unsurprising, Lilith expected him to answer exactly like that. She still pressed, her brows furrowed. What happened last night? In conclusion, Acaces contemplated, before answering. Red Priest is about to be born today. And everything is coming to an end. What? Lilith wished she had misheard, as the meaning behind his words was both outrageous and terrifying. Come on, let's not be late for the wedding. Looking at his watch, Acaces said abruptly. He then grabbed her hand and dragged her out of the house, still dumbstruck. He continued with a mysterious smile. As for the overall situation, you'll find out by the end of the day. He then drew her closer to him, their faces inches apart. It wouldn't be fun if it was known ahead of time, would it? Lilith pushed him away. Whatever you're planning with this, Acaces. I already don't like it at all. Let's go. Acaces sighed, extending his hand to her, without showing any intention of elaborating himself further. Lilith glared at him before taking his hand in hers. Then they vanished from the Phaenopotter. Chapter 119. Rule the World. 4th Epic, July 29, 1110. Backland was brimming with jubilation. People seemed to have forgotten all about World Shake, as they gathered across the city to celebrate the next big event. It was the wedding of Trunsoest, Lord of Order, and Aurnia, Queen of Blood Moon. The world's most famous couple. The wedding will be held in the afternoon, close to dusk, in accordance with ancient custom. Backland's weather was brighter than it had ever been. It was as if the eternal blazing sun, himself, was watching over the king and queen's wedding. Under the light of the sun, a golden chariot pulled by 4 white horses drove out of the nobles' square. Trunsoest was present in the chariot alone, greeting the throngs of excited citizens on the roadside sidewalks. Almost a month had passed since his meeting with Eternal Blazing Sun, and he had to say that the meeting was the most significant turning point in his life. He realized his own insignificance on the grand stage of cosmos. He realized the purpose of the gods. He also became aware of the perilous future that awaits them all. All of these revelations changed his perspective on the world, transforming it into a divine perceptive, as the sun god described it. His hatred for the sun god almost vanished after this. His previous emotions and complaints appeared almost childish to him. Even though he experienced significant change. But, in the end, whether divine or human, he was still a person who sought order above all else. It was only his perception that had changed, allowing him to truly comprehend his role in the grand scheme of things. Thus, he hadn't abandoned his goals, as the change had only served to strengthen his conviction in that regard. Moving on, he had completed the task assigned to him by Eternal Blazing Sun. With the assistance of the Golden Order, he had derived his own divine order. He had gained access to the Golden Order, which had answered all of his doubts and questions. It made his entire process of constructing a new order more efficient, and without its assistance, it would have taken at least decades to get to this point. He based his order on a principle he devised, drawing inspiration from the principle of regression by Eternal Blazing Sun. His principle is known as the principle of causality, and it states, causality is the pull between meanings, it is connection that forms the relationship of all things. He could guess that building your own divine order was the most important part of the apotheosis ritual of the Justiciar. As for the rest, he still didn't know. Despite his persistent prayers to the sun god refused to reveal anything more until he completed his order. He finally decided to meet the sun god, after his marriage with Aurnia. Oh, his wedding. Trunsoest nervously shifted in his chariot, but his demeanor remained unchanged as he continued to greet the citizens. He was actually on his way to pick up Aurnia from her ancestral home. This was an ancient custom in which the groom would pick up the bride from her home for their wedding. N.O.V.L.B. in C. Ohm. They were following this ancient tradition at the request of his love, who had insisted on it being done this way. To his relief, the carriage eventually entered an evacuated lane with no people in sight. It was already too tiring. Trunsoest also caught a glimpse of the ancestral home of the blood race at the end of the lane, which made his heart thump with excitement and nervousness. I hope everything goes well, he finally thought. Meanwhile, Alitsa Tudor walked down a long black corridor beneath the City of Hope. His hasty footsteps echoed loudly as he made his way into the structure's core. Aemon and Adam apprehended Medici and Sauron last night. Meanwhile, he and Antigonus captured Einhorn. Adam, the only one who can block the prying eyes of gods, brought them all to Backland. Adam also suggested that he ascend in Backland. He would have hesitated if it had been before, but he didn't care any longer. He wanted to send a clear message to the gods about the consequences of their own actions. Suddenly, the sound of horse neighing mixed with cheers rang out from the ceiling, causing him to pause and clench his hand before continuing with a frenzied look. Trunsoest. Today was also Trunsoest's wedding. Alitsa laughed as he remembered Trunsoest's invitation and letter. Trunsoest clearly wanted him to be there for his wedding, despite everything that had happened. Oh, Trunsoest, you're still naive to hope for this, he thought. The fates always intended for us to be enemies, not friends. Trunsoest was a true winner in life, and Alitsa couldn't deny it no matter how hard he tried. Love, kingship, godhood, Trunsoest had gotten it all quite easily. Those were also his dreams, but unlike Trunsoest, his path was filled with thrones and hurdles that could easily end his life with just a moment's mistake. It was unfair. Alitsa's eyes glowed with madness as that thought flashed through his mind. Trunsoest completely defeated him in all aspects of life, including love. Sylvia Abraham, Bethel Abraham's granddaughter. He proposed the political marriage to gain the support of Bethel Abraham and his family. To be honest, their personalities and characters clashed horribly. So, much to his chagrin, there was no such stage as blossoming of love on his side. He kept up the pretense with Sylvia, however, for the sake of Bethel Abraham. During this time, as one would expect, the foolish woman fell in love with him, believing that he also loved her. Sylvia even tried to stop him from doing this madness, as she put it. He may have cared enough to listen in the past, but times have changed. Bethel Abraham vanished into thin air, and the Abraham family is facing total persecution by churches of the eternal blazing sun and earth mother. So he couldn't care less about the spoiled princess. He slapped her away in rage before locking her in the tower with his authority. His thoughts were interrupted as he reached the end of the corridor and entered a hall. The hall, which featured a platform and statues of the 6 gods, was illuminated by candles hung upside down. The platform featured a long silver table with 7 chairs on the sides and double thrones in front. This was a temporary location where the parliament first convened before the Palace of Eternity was built. It felt ironic to him that it was all coming to an end in the place where it all actually began. Alitsa walked forward, ignoring the platform, suppressing his restless emotions. Following that, a new passage with a stone door at the end appeared in front of him. With a tense expression, he took a deep look into the passage, and his eyes spoke volumes about his inner conflict. He finally strode forward into the gloomy passage, his eyes becoming firmer than ever. The kings walked their own paths, both above and below. The shackles of fate were slowly crumbling as they steered closer to the divine throne, above all, with a very strikingly similar goal in their hearts. After all, who doesn't want to rule the world? Chapter 120, Wedding. The golden chariot came to a halt in front of the dark mansion, horses neighing in the foreground. Aurnia stood in the sunlight, dressed in a crimson gown, with other members of the blood race accompanying her. Creak. Trunsoest stepped out of the chariot and extended his hand to her, his eyes hopeful and nervous. Everything seemed to stop at this point, as the gazes of all fell on the Queen of Blood Moon, who was as still as a statue. Finally, she took Trunsoest's hand, making him smile, and climbed into the chariot with him. She abruptly turned to face members of her race, who were all staring at her. Their eyes spoke volumes about their pain and grief. Aurnia gave a last bow, a sad smile on her lips. Then she turned resolutely and followed her love, taking a seat in the chariot alongside him. Trunsoest gripped Aurnia's hands tightly, wiping away tears from her cheeks. The horses neighed as they entered, before dragging the chariot out of the ancestral home of the blood race. With citizens' cheers echoing across Backland, the chariot drove to the Palace of Eternity. The chariot came to a halt at the gate of the Place of Eternity as the royal couple stepped down, moonflowers falling from the tenebrous heaven itself, bringing the blessing of night with it. Trunsoest and Aurnia came to a halt in their path, drawing the crimson moon symbol on their chests before proceeding into the Palace of Eternity's open doors. Boom! With their entrance into the royal palace, the doors of the palace finally closed. As the wedding nears, angels and archangels from the Empire entered the Palace of Eternity through various other doors. The wedding was taking place in the large chapel of the seven gods within the Palace of Eternity. Ads by PubFuture. Akasas and Lilith arrived in the midst of the jubilation, holding a cup of vanilla ice cream in their hands and wolfing it down with relish. They didn't let their presence be known just yet. It was not the right time. They made their way outside the decorated chapel to some vacant chairs. "Is Aurnia your daughter?" While scooping up the ice cream, Akasas asked. "In some ways, yes." Lilith nodded, her eyes reminiscent. "She was created from my blood. Not only her, but also the majority of my race. So it is not incorrect to say they are my children." Akasas' face darkened, and she burst out laughing. "They were created from my own blood. I used my authority to create them all," Lilith clarified as her laughter subsided. "At the time, I had the authority of both Mother and Moon. So I didn't give birth to them. I just made them. Now you can put down your worries," she smirked. Akasas snorted, but he didn't press the issue any further, instead asking in a low voice. "Did Ammonizes meet with you again after that?" "No." Lilith shook her head. "She had been distancing herself from me lately, after I told her about us." "I am sorry," she abruptly said, looking down. "I didn't discuss it with you before making that decision." "It's fine." Akasas shook his head and smiled. "No, it's not fine," Lilith said, grabbing his hand. "We are in a relationship, Akasas. If we are to make this work, there should be some level of transparency between us. I also understand that we are gods. There are many things and secrets that we cannot directly reveal to one another. But, at the very least, there, NOVELBJN.C. I understand," Akasas interrupted, his gaze firm. "I promise not to keep you in the dark any longer." Lilith smirked as she crossed her legs. "Let's see if the great sun god keeps his promise at the end of the day." "I will," Akasas smiled as he promised. Classical music rang out from within the chapel, drawing his attention away from her. He looked ahead. The corridor was deserted, as the royal couple and their guests had already entered the chapel. "Let's get going." Seeing this, he said, "I think it is going to begin." Lilith nodded as they rose from their seats and walked to the chapel's door. Ads by PubFuture. They ended up coming to a halt right at the entrance. "We are doing this," Lilith murmured, her eyes looking for reassurance in the man holding her hand. "We are," Akasas declared, his eyes as bright as the sun. "Remember now, we are just eternal blazing sun and earth mother, not Akasasen." He mouthed, "Lilith." Lilith said, riling up. "So, what are we waiting for? Let us go in, mighty sun god." Akasas laughed merrily as they entered the chapel. The classical music drifted into their ears as they entered the chapel, which abruptly came to a halt with their echoing footsteps. Lilith immediately felt all eyes turn towards them. Angels, archangels, and gods. It felt as if the entire world was centered on them. The angels and archangels stared at them, their figures still as a statue. It appears that they are still processing the scene in front of them, but only to fail miserably. The gazes came not only from angels and archangels, but also from gods who were focusing from their divine kingdoms on the palace. Almost all of their gazes were locked on them. She could sense a variety of emotions from the divine gazes since they didn't even try to hide any of it. Shock, bewilderment, confusion. Trunsoest stepped down from the altar with Aurnia, a nervous expression on his face. "Your Excellencies." Meanwhile, Aurnia's eyes welled up with tears and guilt as she looked at Lilith. She was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. "We are here for your wedding, though uninvited," Akasas said, smiling. "But, you don't mind, do you?" "No, not at all." Trunsoest waved his hand, his tense shoulders finally relaxing. "You are most welcome." He gestured to the front seats right away. "Your Excellencies are free to sit in the seats of honor." Akasas nodded, walking towards the seat of honor with Lilith, who finally calmed Aurnia down. As they took their seats, the chapel still remained silent. Ads by PubFuture. Well, Akasis spoke up, his voice commanding. We shall now focus on the wedding, shall we? The angels and archangels immediately obeyed and turned to face the royal couple. They were completely focused on the event, despite their previous curiosity. The divine gazes lingered for a brief moment before leaving the royal palace. The music resumed, as the wedding continued without a hitch. The clergywoman arrived, and she was an angel under Ammonises, the only angel under 6 gods present at the wedding. She approached the altar, holding the Bible, and stood between the royal couple. As the music faded, the clergywoman smiled at the congregation. Honored guests, I'd like to thank each of you for coming out this afternoon, she said. The clergywoman bowed to Akasis and Lilith while holding the Bible in front of her. Let us begin by thanking the gods for this wonderful day. They all bowed their heads and prayed, facing the 7 gods' emblems on the chapel's wall. However, some even turned and bowed toward Akasis and Lilith. After the prayer, the clergywoman led the royal couple through their vows. It was now time for the exchange of rings. An adorable little boy dressed in a blue tuxedo approached Trunsoest and presented him with a ring. He slipped it on Aurnia's finger. The clergywoman smiled and turned to face Aurnia. She asked the question again and received the same answer. Aurnia took her ring from a small girl dressed in pink and placed it on Trunsoest's finger. Their emotional gazes were always locked on each other. The clergywoman finally declared, "By the authority vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife." The crowd erupted as she brought up her hands. "You may now kiss your bride." Trunsoest did so. Their lips met, and then the world changed. It's finally beginning. Akasis smiled. Lilith suddenly jolted from her seat and stared in astonishment at the other end of Backland. It began. The sky started to glow crimson. A dreary and disastrous streak of red fire spread along the horizon, widened and grew brighter, blocking the eternal sun.